For my final project at college this year, I'm going to make a documentary. If I want this documentary to be a piece of work I'm proud of, I'll have to understand things like what makes a good documentary, what techniques are used, and how do you keep the viewer hooked. One of the most important aspects of documentary making is getting through to the viewer. When a documentary pulls at the viewer's heartstrings and evokes strong emotions in them, you know it's very well made and will certainly keep the viewer's attention throughout. Today I will discuss the techniques that top documentary filmmakers are using to make their viewers emotional, and the psychological processes behind these techniques. A study by Nershakova found that documentary films exert a considerable influence on public opinion, promote awareness of pivotal social issues, and reinforce democratic values. As well as this, the demand for documentaries rose by 44% from early 2021 to the end of 2023. This was the largest increase in demand among all unscripted genres. So, with documentaries being so influential in today's age, it begs the question, what techniques are behind their success? Storytelling is just one of 3 essential techniques that documentary makers have mastered to evoke emotions in the viewer. Johnny Wallstrom describes a great story as one with conflict, emotional impact, strong characters, and a clear structure. A classic narrative structure used in storytelling is defined by Doylin 2 as including a protagonist, a conflict, and a resolution. This structure can even be seen in this video, the protagonist being myself, the conflict being my lack of understanding of documentary making, and the resolution being the conclusion to the video, where my understanding will have been developed. Unlike this video, however, documentaries are typically quite long. Because of this, change over time can be seen as the narrative develops. This can really help to change viewers' perspectives and emotionally impact their outlook on a situation presented in the documentary. Interestingly, best-selling author Madison Gonzalez discusses how she uses storytelling techniques to biologically evoke emotion in her audience. She says that to produce dopamine, a hormone directly linked with happiness, a story should pique the audience's interest with a hook or a twist. To produce oxytocin, a hormone directly linked with positivity and tranquility, a story should be vulnerable and honest, and to create a feeling of danger or intensity, a story should highlight the struggles being faced by the protagonist. Techniques like these are key in evoking emotion through storytelling, and arguably the most important of them is a strong narrative. This is often driven by the protagonist talking about their experiences in an interview. In 2021, Catherine Hussey conducted a study to identify the effect of documentary interviews on the viewer's perceptions of interrogations that led to false confession. This might sound quite confusing, so let me explain. Hussey gathered hundreds of participants and got part of the group to watch a documentary interview of an attorney talking about an interrogation technique used to produce false confessions, while another part of the group watched a relative of someone who had been falsely convicted talking about the same thing. Following this, the participants were presented with a separate case where they were tasked with acting as jurors to decide if the suspect was guilty. The results showed that those who watched the attorney were significantly more likely to think that the suspect was guilty than those who watched the relative. This suggests that the emotional impact of the relative's interview was more powerful than the attorney's video at getting the viewer to understand techniques used to produce false confessions. This clearly demonstrates the power of these kinds of interviews in documentaries to evoke emotion in the viewer. Hussey also mentions that false confessions documentaries generally seem to exclude experts on the psychological aspects of false confessions from their lineup of interviewees. To me, this suggests that viewers are more enticed by emotion than fact. Emotional truths are things that the viewer sees as fact, but are actually opinions backed up by strong emotional ties. Aiken suggests that emotional truths stem from feelings performed while recalling trauma, meaning that they come from the interviewee's emotional monologues and are absorbed by the viewer as fact. Aiken follows this by suggesting that, ultimately, the viewer may gain insight and empathy towards the traumatized other, meaning that the viewer will connect with the subject emotionally. The concept of emotional truth suggests that the brain highly values emotion, as if it is truth. This links back to Hussey's study, which also suggests this. Interviews and documentaries are very important for humanizing the story, as they allow subjects to personally share their thoughts, emotions, and perspectives. This helps to create a sense of intimacy between the audience and the subject, which enables empathy and a sense of greater connection. Interviewing these subjects allows filmmakers to capture candid footage, which is both engaging and impactful. Italian filmmaker Franco Sacchi describes documentary interviews as testimonies that provide a strong sense of authenticity. Authenticity itself is another key component to evoking emotion through documentaries. Documentary maker Johnny Wallstrom says that documentaries thrive on authenticity. Likewise, world-renowned documentary film director Alex Gibney highly praises authenticity.
But I think that what I love about some of the best documentaries is that there's a kind of unexpected feeling about them that comes from real life. Real life is so unexpected, it's so varied, it's so undependable. And that's one of the things that I think is magical about it.
The conversation between subject and filmmaker seems to be the main source of authenticity. Even the British Film Institute describe authenticity as a complex dance of tiny human dilemmas playing out between subject, camera, and camera person. Along with this, there is skill involved in capturing authentic moments. Documentarians may capture and display moments that feel real, but they only appear that way because they put them in context via framing and through editing. This suggests that there are specific techniques used and context supplied as a skill to enable authenticity. So how does this all work psychologically? The psychological impact of media on viewers can be easily proven by one of the most famous psychological experiments ever conducted, Albert Bandura's Bobo doll experiment. The experiment sees children watch a video of a model playing with a doll. For some of the children, the model in the video plays nicely with the doll, while for others, the model plays violently with the doll. Following this, the children are presented with the doll in person and told to play with it. The results suggested that those who were shown the violent video tended to act violently towards the toy, while those shown the non-violent video would act nicely towards the toy. This simply proves the effect of media on individuals as a whole. Humans' interpretation of emotion can be explained by James Lange's emotional response theory. Lange suggests that emotional response can be broken down into 3 steps. First, the subjective experience, or the stimulus. This could be physical or a thought, for example, a viewer seeing an emotional interview. The second step is the physiological response. This is the nervous system's reaction to the stimulus, for example, an increased heart rate. Finally, the third step is the behavioural response. This is the expression of emotion, for example, crying. These emotions can be grouped under 7 basic, universal emotions, as coined by Paul Ekman. Ekman suggests that the 7 universal emotions are anger, contempt, disgust, enjoyment, fear, sadness, and surprise. Any documentary with good storytelling, emotional interviews, and authenticity is bound to evoke emotions in viewers.
If you take that unpredictable quality and you invest in it or see in it some dramatic forms like a sense of narrative and a sense of character, and you explore that, that's, to me, is the most interesting.
Who better to learn from than one of the greatest documentary makers ever, Alex Gibney? So, now I know the techniques to use when creating a documentary for my final major project this year to make sure that it really gets through to the viewer.